You're listening to the Tranquility Tribe Podcast, an empowering space for all parents from conception to childhood. In this podcast, you will explore your birth options, hear from experts in the field, learn to embrace self-indulgence, and prepare yourself for parenthood with Hehe. She's a coffee connoisseur, lover of deep belly laughs, a big-time tailgater, and your neighborhood birth junkie. From Mississippi to Massachusetts and everywhere in between, here's your host, Hehe. Hello, villagers. Happy Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited that we're together right now. I'm so excited that you have chosen to hang out with me. Thank you so much. It means so much to me that every Tuesday and Friday, you take time out of your schedule to tune in, to listen to my thoughts, to listen to the experts that I have put in time to get and chat with and pick their brain, that you're taking time to show up for yourself, to learn this information, to know what your choices are, to show up for your family and your kids. Oh my gosh, it's a ripple effect. Do you get it? Do you see? I'm totally so excited that you're here. Thank you so much. You are listening to episode number 69 of the Tranquility Tribe Podcast. In today's episode, I'm sitting down with Amanda Huell, the designer nanny and parenting guru. She is the founder of Parenting with a Punch, and Amanda is a communication specialist and helps parents implement parenting strategies to gain control of their home again. Say that 10 times fast. Amanda strongly believes that parenting on the same page, positive discipline, owning your energy, and healthy communication are the essential steps to creating the family life of your dream, as these are the 4 pillars of Parenting with a Punch. Her approach is very straightforward, and she tells it like it is. She can turn a partner who is hardcore anti-getting help to being able to see the light so fast. I've never seen someone work magic like Amanda. She's a friend, a colleague, and a fellow businesswoman here in Boston, and I am so excited to have her on the show. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hi, Hehe. Thank you.
I'm so excited to have you on the show. This is something that Amanda and I have been planning for a while, and I think every one of our listeners are going to walk away with something that they learn today. This is definitely an episode that is a must listen for everyone out there. So, Amanda, as the designer nanny, can you set the stage for us? What does your support look like for folks out there who might be having a hard time envisioning what you do?
Yeah. So basically, I call myself the designer nanny because I'm coming into the home and then I'm leaving. There are situations where I will do overnights with my clients, depending on the support that they need. And that can look anywhere from a child that is suffering from maybe nightmares or has some sort of trauma, difficulty sleeping and needs support, with sleeping, obviously. And then pretty much, any and everything that parents are struggling with their child's behavior, whether or not they're presenting aggressive behaviors like such as hitting, or presenting anxiety or have diagnoses such as ADHD. I basically go into the home. I help parents be on the same page if they are in a committed relationship and or married. And for some of my co-parenting families, I sometimes will go to both of the homes, so mom and dad's home. I'm willing that, of course, both parents are on the same page. But once I come into the picture, the goal is to try and get them to want to work together. So I have those separate conversations with both mom and dad to let them know the importance of sort of having my support in both the homes, so we can try and get, as much support and success as we can. And then, we kind of it's catered, of course, individually to each family, depending on what it is that they're struggling with. Again, we could be dealing with different diagnoses or that are often comorbid with other diagnoses. And then we have the younger kids that just could be struggling with tantruming, throwing fits and not listening, and parents just ultimately just done and just can't, they're pulling their hair out and just are so stressed out, and they need that extra support. They don't feel confident in what it is that they're doing. We kind of just start from scratch. It's like a reset. So I come into the home and it's a total reset. We have a discussion about their family rules, and kind of like setting those non-negotiables with both of the parents, and having each of them list, and then also bringing the children into it, and having them be able to sort of be involved and have their input, which obviously helps. And again, that looks different for every family, but it's interesting, because when I go in and we sort of start having this discussion, a lot of the times parents like have no idea what their house rules are. They just don't have that structure. And it's just something that I just see that most just don't even really think about. It's just not something that they, it's not that it's not of any importance, but it's just something, I guess, that just doesn't come to mind. They just don't think to sort of like connect on that level in terms of, their non-negotiables, and like what's allowed and what isn't allowed.
Well, I think part of it is their culture doesn't teach us to like communicate about what our expectations are in parenthood, right? So like there's no discussion, especially from someone who's in that part of people's lives. Like, I'm helping you prepare to have a baby, and there's no discussion about like what parenthood is going to look like, what your parenting strategies are going to look like. I hope that you guys have talked about what you grew up with, because there's no discussion in my part of it. I never see people talk about this stuff. And I think so many people think that having a baby is not that big of an adjustment, but it is. It really is a very big adjustment. It is about to really turn your world around. I'm not even going to say upside down, because that kind of insinuates something negative, and it doesn't have to be negative, but it's going to turn you around. You will not be on the same path that you were pre. I can promise you that. So that slides me right into my first question is, what about the people who are preparing for a baby? What should they be thinking about as far as parenting? So, most people think they have a long time to prepare for that. And the reality is, no, you don't. You should start preparing for parenting your child from the minute that they're born. Like, some people like me, I would argue that the language that you use while you're trying to conceive, or the minute that you get pregnant, impacts your baby. But some people won't go that far. For the people who think that it's when your baby gets here, what should those people be thinking about as far as like parenting? Because it does actually happen. Your child's, language receptors start at about 2 months. They're going to be able to communicate back with you starting between 4 and 6 months. Like, you have to be on your toes. And I think 2, 4, 6 months, that first 12 months passes by so quickly, and you don't really have time to adjust in the moment. So forward thinking, what should we be thinking about?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And you mentioned it as far as like not really having any idea like what your parenting styles are. I think, and especially in our culture today, right, there's so much pressure in general for women to even like get pregnant and have a family, without even obviously bringing age into it. But so it's just like, oh, hey babe, you want to get pregnant? You want to, you let's have a baby. Or, you might have that discussion prior. You want to have, how many children you might have. But there's never that conversation of like, okay, well, what's your parenting style look like? Like, what does your discipline look like? Do you believe in spanking your child? Do you believe in, you like yelling or reprimanding, or, putting your children in timeout? I mean, there's just so many questions to ask yourself in the sense of like the type of parent that you want to be. I mean, do you want your child to, I think it's probably safe to say that all parents want their children to listen to them, right? But they don't think about it prior. When it comes to that age, even 1 year old, hearing the word no, it's like, what? Did you just say no? And some parents they don't even think twice about it. So I think it's really important to have that discussion. Look up the different parenting styles, figure out like what your style is, and what works for you. Of course, I'm going to suggest the authoritarian type parenting is, in my humble opinion, the more just basically it just, from what I've seen in families in the home, that sort of seems to be the style of parenting that really teaches children boundaries and setting limits, and really creates that healthy dynamic between the parent and child relationship. And then you're still able to obviously, create that connection. So talking about the parenting styles, of course, and your discipline, and then also having your non-negotiables, in the sense of like, what are we going to allow and what are we not going to allow? For example, are we a couple that might swear? Just as an example, is now once we have children, do we want to swear around our children? Is it something that we're now going to stop doing? I've seen that often, where that can end up being like a fight. And it's like in that moment with the children, the partner swears and it's like, I stop swearing. Like, I told you to stop swearing. And it's like, first of all, don't do that in front of the children, number one. And number two, like, you've been with this person, your significant other, for how long? And then now all of a sudden you bring a child into the picture, and now you expect your partner to change. And it doesn't work like that. It's not that easy. You have to really set those boundaries beforehand and know like how your parenting is going to look like, and like what you're going to be comfortable with. And I think a lot of times, again, like, we just don't really think about that when we bring a child into this world. And then I think also having that very real conversation about like, how are we going to put our relationship first, or how are we going to still connect with each other? Are we going to make sure that we get out once a month, or, are we going to have like bedtime, or like 9 p.m. every night, just have like a 20-minute conversation, like recap of our day, and like sort of just talk about, what went on, or maybe even talk about the children, right? Because a lot of times that kind of, there's no communication about what the day looked like. I often hear too, like, the other partner has no idea that the child might have like gotten into a fight with their sibling, because they're not communicating. They're not taking that time to really connect with each other. So I think that's something that's really important to sort of like hone in on, and kind of like make a contract with each other, and really know like, okay, this is something that is important to us and that we want to continue to instill once we have children. Now, obviously, realistically, things happen, things get in the way, but if you're both committed and you really want to like hit this parenting gig from a team effort, then I think it's really important to have those tough conversations prior, and make sure that you're writing it down. And if you don't feel comfortable, get support from a professional, whether or not it's myself, or maybe sitting down with a with a marriage therapist, and kind of like walking you through sort of like some of the steps to make sure that you're both on the same page prior to bringing the children into the mix, because it does make a huge difference.
I love that you talk about, making a plan beforehand so that you're not doing something for the first time in front of your children. So I always tell my clients, I support in the moment learning for certain things, but your birth is not one of those places that you want to be making big decisions that you've never thought about before that impact the rest of your life or your birth in a really big way. And I think kind of parenthood is probably the same thing, just because it is a pretty big thing, right? So parenthood is something that we should absolutely be thinking about. And I love that you bring it up to say, don't do this for the first time in front of your children. And I also think it's important to say, whenever you've agreed on something with your partner, it's really important to keep your word. Try hard to keep
Yes.
your word. That is not to say in any way that if your partner messes up to like burn them at the stake,
Of
but
course.
it does mean try your damnedest to keep what you say to your partner. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with people and they agree to do something and then one partner just really doesn't give it their all, and you know what, it makes the whole operation go to shit. So
Yes.
you're letting everyone down. It's your partners depending on you, your practitioner that's helping you is depending on you, your family if you have other children, if it involves other family members, other friends, people are dependent on you. So keep your word. And to circle back to the authoritarian, do you mind explaining that to people who are thinking like, well, what is authoritarian? Am I authoritarian parenting? What do you mean by that?
Authoritative, sorry. Authoritative parenting is basically being more firm but loving. So that's my approach, firm and loving. You can still be firm and set those boundaries and let your children know that you're the one in charge, but still be loving and still have a relationship with them, and create that specialness where like that you want them to be able to come to you, right? Especially when they get older, even at 3 years old. Children are going to mess up and they're going to make mistakes, and you want them to be able to come to you and tell you like, I did something that I wasn't supposed to do, and then you're not creating creating them to be scared of you. So the authoritarian is really just like, again, creating those boundaries, and knowing that, that you're the one in charge, and creating that like sense of security. So your children like feel safe, because the reality too is if you don't have those boundaries set, you don't have those expectations set, children go haywire. They are like, what the heck is going on? It's like a total free for all. And it doesn't sit with them. And I think it's really difficult for many parents specifically, of course, to really comprehend that if they don't have those set boundaries and structures set up, then they are going to truly struggle and they're going to have a hard time. So that's kind of an essence of authoritative parenting. I've heard that with authoritative parenting and getting support for like strong-willed children, right? Like empathetic children that are super sensitive, doesn't work, but or at least I've heard that from some professionals. But I strongly disagree with that, because the strong-willed, empathetic children, the sensitive children, they need that balance of like, they need to know what the boundaries are, but then they also need you to be empathetic to them as well, because they are sensitive. Like, you need to get down on their level and let them know, like, these are things that you're quote unquote not supposed to be doing, but it's okay to be upset and it's okay to be mad at the moment, but we need to teach them how to communicate in a more effective way, as opposed to lashing out, throwing a tantrum, or using aggressive behaviors.
I love it. Emotional intelligence is everything. And, it always boggles me, adults that have really poor emotional intelligence. It just blows my mind that people can grow up and have literally zero emotional intelligence. As far as boundaries for children, I also believe in firm boundaries, but warm. So warm, firm boundaries, filled with love, but definitely giving the children structure. I believe that children long for structure. I believe that they flourish in an environment that they can predict and that they can know what's coming next, so that they can master their schedule and their skills throughout the day, and it gives them self-confidence. And then it's just this cycle of positivity, and they learn that they can do it, and then it makes them confident to try new things, and then they master it and they learn they can do it, and then it's just, I hope that you can see it, listeners.
Yeah, and then you're boosting their self-esteem,
100%.
which in turn creates a healthy emotional intelligence, and that's what you want. You want a high, healthy self-esteem, because that's what's going to create that confidence in your child, and that's what's going to help them to flourish and want to try new things, and just like be able to handle the tough things, because guess what? They learn all the tough things from a very young age.
100%. And I love, love, love. I actually just told a parent this yesterday. If your child is going to experience heartache and someone being ugly to them and them experiencing new emotions, wouldn't you rather that happen under your roof in your home so that you can model for them what you expect and how you want them to go out into the world? You can help instill in them the reaction that they see and that they learn and that they then go out and treat other people with, therefore teaching others. Like, you have a ripple effect right in your hands. Be careful what you do with this child. So for all the people out there who we have just completely blown their mind, what do you say to people who are thinking, well, I don't know what I don't know? Where do you tell people to find their resources to help with parenting? And after you share yours, I have a list of books and podcasts and websites I'm going to share with you guys, but I also will put them in the show notes.
Yeah. So Dr. Shafali is a woman that I have a lot of respect for. She's sort of in the world right now as, of course, the more conscious and more like positive parenting. And she really, encourages the connection, with the child, and creates that healthy, positive dynamic. So I do suggest, she's had a few episodes with Oprah on Soul Sunday recently, that I would suggest checking out. And, as far as, when it comes to reading books, I'll be honest, basically every single family that comes to me that is struggling and that needs support has told me, no word of a lie, that they've read a billion books and none of it works. And it's not to say that reading a book can't, give you the tools that you need. I think we have to keep in mind that every single family is different. Every single family has different struggles. There's different diagnoses, again, that come into play. And to sort of like base it off of, and then the other thing is too, is when you're reading a book, it's really hard for parents to actually follow through. So that's the difference in terms of like reading something and then actually taking it in the stressful moments. And that's basically why, when families are at that level of needing that support, of having somebody in their home, that's where it truly makes a difference. But yeah, I'd love to hear your list, of course, too. And then I am in the process of writing my first parenting book as well. So that should be, it was supposed to launch this summer, but life happened, and I hear more and more that's like the world of authors. It just ends up getting pushed back, but it will be coming out sooner than later. So I'm super excited. And it's really just going to be like a memoir of like this, a lot of stories, of course, not using names, of just real life situations. And, I'm not the end all be all by any means, but I think my approach in the parenting world, especially because I'm hands-on in the home and there's really not too many that actually do this kind of work. I just, I'm confident that I know what I'm doing. And when families work with me and they get that support in person, it just makes a world of a difference. So you will have to check out my book when it launches.
Absolutely. That's so exciting, listeners. Keep that on the forefront of your mind. Super exciting. As for my resources, these are just resources that I've picked up over the years through the classroom experience, my, behavioral health experience, the mental health, the parenting, the early intervention, all the things. So my compiled list, and again, listeners, I'll have all these in the show notes for you, but I love Dr. Barry Brazelton. Also, I will note, mine are for generally 0 to 3. It's a great foundation for 0 to 5, but other than that, it's probably better to get someone else's opinion. But Dr. Barry Brazelton, his Touchpoint books are so spot on. You cannot go wrong with those. They explain everything. And his potty training book is irreplaceable. I teach from it all the time, literally all the time. The Gardener and the Carpenter, you can get that one on Amazon. The Whole Brain Child, that one's really good for understanding what's going on with your kid and helping understand their behaviors. The 5 Love Languages of Children. So I think that everyone should read the 5 love languages. If you're an adult, you need to know what your love language is, and you should know what your partner's is and those who are close to you. And why not your children? So read that one. And then finally, if you think you have a sensitive child, I recommend Lucy Jane Miller, maybe, I think is the author, Sensational Kids. That is a really awesome book. And then some podcasts. Well, Amanda has an amazing podcast, so we'll link that as well. So you should check that out. Also, Voices of Your Village by my good friend Alyssa Blass Campbell. Janet Lansbury has a really awesome podcast on iTunes called Unruffled.
Mm-hmm.
The Balance in Motherhood podcast by Sarah Bivens. Take It or Leave It podcast. And then Motherhood Unstressed with Lizzie Carlisle. All of those have a different feel. All of them have different approaches. I really invite you all to check them out and see which ones speak to you. And remember, with podcasts, you can download this episode, but not that episode. So you don't have to download every single episode from every single podcast. Go on there, download a few that speak out to you, give them a listen, and see what you find. So those are my list. After we have all this information and you take it all in and you kind of go through it, and now what? So Amanda, once you have this information, what do we do with this? What do we do with all the information that we just gobbled up?
Well, I think so the reason why I think parents can get so easily overwhelmed, right, when they're taking in a lot of information, especially because there's, like you said, different approaches, is you really have to go with like your gut and what speaks to you, right? I mean, and sort of like, and the reality too is a lot of it's trial and error, right? So let's say you hear a specific podcast and they give you a suggestion as to maybe how to handle your child tantruming, for instance, and you try it and it works or it doesn't work. A lot of it is trial and error. You have to pay attention to what works and what doesn't work. And if it's not working and you're trying different things from resources that you're listening or reading, right? It's not working, then I think that you really need to look into hiring a professional. And again, whether that's bringing somebody into your home. So whether or not that is hiring somebody to come into your home, whether or not that's having a conversation with a mental health therapist, a social worker, psychologist, again, it really just depends on your exact situation and the support that you are looking for. And I would start from there. I would also highly suggest that you, of course, I'm sure a lot of us belong to parenting groups and, any sort of local community resources. But I think it's important to keep in mind, unfortunately, when it comes to community resources, there's not that much, at least in the Boston area, there's unfortunately not that much around as far as free resources anyways, and getting that like extra support. But
I think you hit on a lot of good points right there. But first being, Facebook might not be the best place to get parenting info. So these people don't know your baby. These people don't know your family. They don't know what your life has been like up until this point. And even the longest novel Facebook post doesn't cover it. So
yeah,
not to be rude, but come on, what are you doing? Turn into the internet and a bunch of random strangers. And some of these groups are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of opinions. And that's all they are. They're opinions. And you don't know what these people's backgrounds are. So be very careful asking Facebook for advice.
Sorry to interrupt. No, I do not ask for advice. What you need to ask advice from a professional and an expert in that area. It honestly drives me crazy when I see people posting and asking their opinions on how to handle their child's behavior. It's I personally feel that it is absolutely ridiculous. You need to, you go to a dentist, right, to get your teeth clean. You go to a doctor to check out to see if you're sick. So why would you, like, and it's not to throw any disrespect, like, just because you're a parent does not make you an expert. I'm sorry. That's just the reality of that. So thank you. I had to chime in.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I have seen some of the most dangerous and crazy things said on the internet, and you have no way to filter that out. It seems insane to bring that into your home, in my opinion. But what's best for you, it doesn't have to be what's best for me. And so I guess that's kind of what I want to chat about. I'm a firm believer that I really make no bones about it, but what's best for you isn't necessarily what's best for the next family or the next parent. So can you give us your thoughts on mom shaming and the nasty judgmental games that happen in parenthood?
I really have to have those, like, very real, raw conversations with parents, because a lot of times you hear, they're nervous, they're scared, especially if their child, for instance, is displaying behaviors in public, and they get very embarrassed. And I get that, but we have to have that very real conversation of, like, easier said than done, but this is your child. Worry about your child. Who gives a shit about what another parent is thinking or saying about you? And you know what? If they're giving you looks or they're making comments, you can kindly say, you're not me. You have no idea what's going on with my child. So please back off. And I don't think there's absolutely anything wrong with that. I think because of society today, and because there's so much overload, especially with social media, and there's such, like, high expectations in general of parenting, we sort of just, we care more about what others think than we actually care about, like, our own family. And to me, I think that's asinine, because we need to work more on, like, ourselves and not worrying about what other people think. Like, this is your world. These people that are judging or shaming or saying their 2 cents about your situation, for instance, they're not in your home. They're not living your lives on a day-to-day basis. They're not coming home to you. They're not eating dinner with you. They're not sleeping in bed with you. So who gives a shit what anybody else thinks? It's your world. And you know what? If your child is, for instance, tantruming at 3 years old, because this is a big one, I think it's really difficult for parents of young children to reach out when they start to see struggles with their child. And they always say, oh, it's going to get better, it'll go away. And then they don't end up reaching out for support. And it's those parents 5 years later that are coming to me, and they are, like, at their total wit's end. And every single family will tell me that they've seen signs when their children were younger. Where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 6 years ago? Stop worrying about what others think. If you are stressed out, you're having a hard time, and it could be the smallest thing. You might not need a very strong intervention. You might not need the support for 4 weeks. Maybe you just need a week. Maybe you just need some extra tools in your toolbox to just get you through the hump and sort of, like, help, nip it in the bud and the behaviors, for instance, that your child is struggling with. Or maybe it's just, you and your partner really want to parent on the same page, and you just need a professional to help sort of, like, bridge that miscommunication, right? Who cares? Just, get support for your family. It's your life. It's your quality of life. You're the one that has to live it at the end of the day.
That brings up so many things for me. So first of all, for all the people who are, like, staring at you because your child is tantruming, I challenge you to look at them and ask them if they want to help. Because in my world, if you're not helping, you don't get a say. So
Right.
Walk on by, goodbye. Or you can come over here and help me. If it looks like I'm struggling, come on over. I welcome suggestions. I'm clearly struggling. What I'm doing isn't working. 100%. Don't let people bully you in public. No, thank you for that. And then as far as laying down the foundation, if you lay down the foundation from birth to 3 years old, I promise, in all capital letters with 50,000 exclamation points afterwards, promise that 5+ will be easy. From 3 to 5 is always kind of a gamble. Sometimes you have to like do a little extra. Sometimes
Yep.
it's totally a breeze. But if you can set those foundations from 0 to 3, 3 to 5 will be whatever it'll be. But from 5 on, I promise your life will be so much easier. I promise, 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 promise. It'll be loads easier. Oh my gosh, if I could give one thing to every single parent, it is be intentional birth to 3. Just do it. It'll make your life easier on the back end of things. So we chatted about the differences in parents. I want to know about kiddos. I often hear, actually all the time, my first baby this, or my other baby that, or my other children this, or all the things. And I'm quick to remind this parent that every child is very different. You can't compare. Just like every pregnancy, birth, postpartum, they're all different. This baby is different. They're their own person. They have their own reactions. They have their own way to perceive things. How can people prepare to bring home a new baby to kids that are already in the home? And for our listeners, we have a TBH download, and we'll put that in the show notes as well to help you transition life with a new baby to kids that are already in your home. But Amanda, what about communicating with your kids that are already in the home and their world is about to be turned around too?
Yeah, I think it's, what I see, well, first of all, yeah, it's a total transition for everybody, for of course the parents, and especially mom, whether or not she's breastfeeding or not, right? And having to like totally tend to a newborn baby. And then they might have an older child, whether or not there's a difference of a year or 2 years or 3, again, obviously depending on the age difference. But I think it's, yes, it can be hard to balance, but as long as you are vocal, with your older child, and sort of just explain like, you have a new sibling in the home, like, there's going to be times where mommy has to, give attention, to the new baby. But that's okay. And it might get frustrating for you, and maybe because mommy's attention is not 100% on you, but please, and just kind of like having that real conversation with them and letting them know that like, that they're still loved and that they're still cared for. It can be difficult obviously with a brand new little one, but you can try and involve the older child, whether or not it's even just like asking them to like go get mom's diaper bag or something, just to kind of like help involve them a little bit so it doesn't feel like the child is being completely like, shunned from any sort of like attention. And I also strongly agree that like less is more too. I don't think having this like full blown conversation, especially like maybe when the, right before the baby is born, and sort of like how things are going to change, because the child is not going to even retain and they're not going to be able to process the information. And if it's a child that is more sensitive and struggles with transition, then giving them too much of a heads up and giving them too much information can be very, very overwhelming for that child. And you might not know that your child struggles with it, right, until you bring that new baby home. So I think it's just important to, as much as you can and as difficult as it is, to pay attention to your other child as well. Do you notice that they might get a little bit more sensitive, or now maybe they're starting to hit a little bit more, they're screaming or throwing tantrums? Just kind of pay attention to those signs that that your older child is kind of having a rough time. They can get through it, but I think it's going to be verbatim language that you use, with your child, and then sort of like, again, like nipping it in the bud before it gets too escalated, right? And it goes on for like longer periods of time.
I love it. So prepping your older child can be kind of tricky. I find a lot of parents,
Yeah.
this is one of the places that people read a lot of books. My advice to parents is always like, if you're going to pick an approach, you should just pick it and stick with it. Don't read 20 books. If you're going to read 20 books, that's fine if you want to know all your options, but don't try and pick
take too
20
many.
different approaches. You really just want to pick something and stick with it. I also always love to tell parents two things, and you'll see more on the download, but books are really awesome to help your child understand what's about to happen in their world. So the language that the books use are very intentional, and the pictures will help them visualize it. And then you can also stem conversation from books. Kids learn so much from books, and they're also so many age appropriate books depending on the age of your child. So books are really awesome. And then I also say being mindful of setting aside a time that you can just spend 5, 10, probably more than 5, but 10, 20, 30 minutes with your child or children that are already in the home, even after the baby gets here. And this may be a great time that the baby is sleeping, or, your partner has them, or a family or friend is holding the baby, or anything. Maybe someone has come to get the baby, and they're taking the baby around the block to get the baby some fresh air, and you're just sitting with your older children. There's lots of things that you can do. If you've had your baby for a little bit or you feel great, you can even take your older children on a walk around the block, and someone can sit with your baby at home. There's lots of things that you can do. But I do think that books are a great way to prepare your child. And then also hitting on what Amanda said, making sure that you just carve out that time. It has to be intentional, because it won't happen if you don't schedule it, unfortunately. A new baby's going to change your life so much. You won't have it if you don't schedule it. So being intentional and mindful about that. So, Amanda, let's shift to people who are sitting there thinking, yeah, right, it is not that easy as Hehe and Amanda want you to believe. And make no mistakes about it, people. I'm not saying it's going to be a walk in the park, but I am saying it doesn't have to be this crazy struggle in a madhouse feeling. Amanda, what's your advice to parents who are feeling totally overwhelmed right now?
Well, first of all, take a deep breath. And really talk to yourself and ask yourself, what is it that you want or need in this moment? Is it that you need extra support? Is it that you need some alone time, whether or not it's carved out daily or if it's carved out on a weekly basis? Do you need time with your partner? What is it that you need that's going to help release some of the stress? Because I do strongly believe that, we touched on it, having that foundation, and that's really what I help lay and sort of reset with the families that I work with. I strongly feel that parenting does not have to be that hard. If you are intentional and you set yourself and your children up for success by laying that foundation prior to the children coming into the picture, have those boundaries set, have those non-negotiables set, and if you're struggling with support, whether or not finances are an issue or not, get it. And know that it can and always will get better, but you have to be the one to believe it first. So if you're ready and willing to make that shift or to make that change, then you're the only one that can ultimately make it happen. Complaining about it and being stressed out and feeling stressed out is not going to help you. So you have to take action. And just know that there is support out there and there is somebody for you. You just have to start the process. But first, take a deep breath and recognize that if this is something that you want to create change, if your family is struggling that much and you really want a different quality of life and you want to be able to have that more calm and ease in parenting, know that it can happen, but it starts with you.
So what are the first steps? What does starting that process look like for someone?
Well, they can, possibly, depending on where they're located, of course, maybe, again, depending on what it is they're struggling with, whether or not it's behavior or if it's maybe just the demands of parenting, look for whether or not it's a one-to-one therapist, and Googling somebody, local in your area. or if it's behavior that you're struggling with, try and find that support locally. In the younger years, I do highly suggest getting the in-home support versus talk therapy in an office, because it creates a totally different dynamic for the child. I am, aware that you may not have the option of in-home depending on where you're located in the world. But there are options to work with a professional virtually if they're not able to come into your home. And guess what? There's also some that also travel. So it can be done if you need that support. But the professional, in Googling and knowing what you're sort of looking for. And if you don't, start with the therapist route, I would suggest. Or if I don't always suggest pediatrician because they don't always have the answers. I would look to a developmental pediatrician because they're the ones that are going to have a little bit more of that support in the area of like behavioral and mental health and social emotional. So reach out to a developmental pediatrician and see if there's any resources locally for you.
So what are the 3 biggest signs that you might need some extra support in your home from a professional? What are parents looking for? Because I think a lot of people might be experiencing things and then they kind of slough them off as, oh, every couple has this. And while every couple might have this, it depends on like the gravity, how long it's been going on, the severity,
right.
A lot of stuff. So what are we looking for? What are some signs that people can be looking for if they should be raising red flags and they might not be?
Well, I mean, stress, of course, is a big one, but when I say stress, obviously that looks different for everybody, right? But if you are like feeling withdrawn, and you're not wanting to even like have that conversation with your significant other about feeling stressed, that I would say is a sign that you need extra support. If you and your partner are struggling, there's basically non-communication between the two of you. Neither of you are on the same page with your discipline. You're fighting and or yelling in front of the kids, or even if you're fighting or yelling behind closed doors. If you're not getting along, your children will feel that. And then the third I would say, I don't know. I mean, I guess I mean, well, if you see that your child is having a hard time. So if your child is throwing a fit or tantruming, even if it's once a day, in my humble opinion, that is a sign to reach out for support, because your child should not, I don't care if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, your child should not be throwing a tantrum every single day of their lives.
It almost reminds me of pain. Like some people are like, no pain, no gain. It's actually
well,
like
maybe
like pain is a sign of like not good things. Like strengthening your muscles and soreness is one thing, but pain, that is
different.
usually a sign that something's not working right. I couldn't agree more. So what's the number one thing that you recommend to parents who need to reconnect after having kids, whether it be their baby's 1-year-old or 10 years old? What?
You have to carve out time for the two of you. Bottom line.
Boom.
Bottom line. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's sitting having coffee in the morning together and it's 10 minutes before the kids get up, or I don't care. Going to a movie, going to dinner, grabbing lunch on your partner's lunch break. You got to do it, because if you don't, it's gonna fall apart at some point. And that could look 3 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, and you're going to look back and you're going to be like, holy shit, we have just been like surviving. Who wants to live life and just survive?
That's so sad.
It's not a way to live. And unfortunately, I see it all too often, and it breaks my heart, because at the end of the day, It's the children who suffer. And if you get that support and you know, and somebody that gets you and can really help like bridge that lack of communication and like, you know, not parenting on the same page, like your life can change significantly. And whether or not your children have witnessed, you know, what they've witnessed, you know, it's if you're ready and willing to put in the work, you can continue to live a life full of more ease in parenting and be happy in your relationship and like model for your children that marriage is actually a healthy experience.
I love it. So I always recommend that new parents really set aside 20 minutes a day. So just 20 minutes times 7 is like not even 2.5 hours, maybe two and a half hours of time with your partner. If you do 24 times 7, there's 24 hours in each day, 7 days a week. That's 168 hours. So 168 hours and you're devoting not even 2.5 to your partner. I think that can be done. And then I always recommend at least one date night a month. And it can be 2 hours and you can walk around the corner and get ice cream and you can walk back. Or it can be a 6-hour concert date. I don't care what you do.
Right.
And generally the only exception I give is like the first month, maybe the first 2 months after you have a baby. But after that, I'm checking in to remind you, like, have you taken time this month to just be with you and your partner? Yeah. Oh gosh. Carving out time. What a great one. All right, Amanda. Our time has come to a close. This has been so much fun, and this has been invaluable information. Amanda, where can people connect with you if they want to, if they were interested in your services, or they wanted to follow you on social media, if they wanted to listen to your podcast? How do they get all of your info?
So my Parenting with a Punch podcast is on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. I have a Parenting with a Punch LLC Facebook page. Parentingwithapunch.com is my website where you can get my email information and phone number is listed there as well as a form to fill out and or schedule a free 15-minute talk to learn sort of, you know, the services that I provide. Instagram is Parenting with a Punch, and Twitter, you can find me at Designer Nanny.
I love it. Wow, listeners, you had no clue you were coming today to get all of this information, from parenting styles to talking about parenting styles in pregnancy before your baby gets here, and laying the foundation to make the rest of your life easier, to spending 20 minutes a day out of 168 hours each week with your partner. Take a deep breath, think about what you need in this moment, and make a choice. Act on that choice. Go ahead. You can do it. You have permission. You have the strength. Amanda and I believe in you. Happy Tuesday, listeners. As always, villagers, find your tribe and love them hard. Did you know that you can join our online tribes? Our private Facebook group can be found by searching the Tranquility Tribe Podcast on Facebook, and our Instagram tribe is Tranquility by Hehe. If you have a story you want to share with us, please reach out to us at tranquilitybyhehe@gmail.com. Until next time, villagers.